Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Well, joining me now from Yorkshire is the former Director of Maternal and Child Health at the World Health Organization and now Professor of Global Health at UCL, Professor Anthony Costello. Thanks for coming on the programme, Professor Costello. When you look at the numbers in the UK now, when you look at the numbers in Italy, and when you remember what the numbers were like in China, are we going to be Italy in 2 weeks from now?
Yes. Look, you can't fight a virus if you don't know where it is. The basic principles from the WHO is that you find, test, isolate and treat every case to break the chains of transmission. And the UK policy is worrying because they announced at the press conference that they're going to stop population testing. That's crazy. That's not going to delay the epidemic. It's going to accelerate it. And we will certainly be in the same situation as Italy, whether it's 10 days or 2 weeks or a bit further, we can argue about. Now, I don't have any problem with worrying or arguing about social distancing and mass gatherings and the like, and the timing of that. But we must be getting the data on what's happening. And everything in the WHO report from China is doable here. Why can't we do it?
So
Why can't we set up?
What should the government be doing now then?
They should be mobilizing the country. They should be setting up mobile testing centers. They should get the test result down like China from 12 days to 3 days. You've got to identify family clusters, get them isolated, look after people that can't look after themselves in isolation centers, get CT scans out into the communities or into populations where they can get to them quickly if they've got pneumonia. And you've got to, and obviously do the treatment that the NHS can provide, but we've got to prevent. And we can get this down. It's worked in China. It's worked in Korea. It's worked in Singapore. Giving up now and saying, well, we're just going to let this rip is going to cause a catastrophe.
Why is it not working in Italy then, for instance?
Well, because firstly, I'm not quite sure why it all focused around Lombardy, whether they got a number of super spreaders in or whatever. But I don't know enough about what they're actually testing. They're trying to cope like China did with the explosion of cases in Wuhan. And when they realized they'd messed up, they put in place all of this structure I've described, and it took them 7 weeks. But after 7 weeks, they had it under control. And more, if it is going to flare up again when they loosen things, they've got a nationwide system in place, got the data, they've got the mechanisms, and they can loosen it gently and then damp it down again. Ultimately, we need a vaccine. And vaccine creates herd immunity, not a disease that's going to kill 400,000 people. So we've got to mobilize our country, and I thought that's what they were preparing over the last month.
Okay.
And they're not doing it.
Sorry, running out of time. Let me ask you one very quick question. Can we turn this round at this stage, yes or no?
Yes, I think we can. It's going to take time. It'll take 2 months at least, but why not?
Okay.
Why can Asian countries do it and we can't?
Okay. Thank you very much, Anthony Costello. Well, amid some scenes of panic buying and empty shelves, supermarkets have asked shoppers to be considerate and refrain from stockpiling so others aren't left without things that they need. Retailers say that they are working with the government and suppliers to avoid shortages. But are they prepared? Joining me now is Tim Lang, who's Professor of Food Policy at City University in London. Professor Lang, thanks for coming on the programme. The government has said that the supply chains are guaranteed, the supermarkets will not run out of food. Do you believe those guarantees?
No, but I understand why they're saying it, and because they're saying it on normal conditions. The public doesn't really realize over the last 40 years or so, there's been a revolution in the food system. We don't have storage, there aren't warehouses, or not like there used to be with months of food. It's all just in time. The food system has borrowed from Toyota cars a system of literally having the food arrive at the supermarket back office just in time. That's very easy to disrupt. That's not me saying it. That's all logistics people know that. The supermarkets know that. So they need us to carry on behaving as normal. Now, listen to what Tony Costello from UCL was saying just before me. We're actually having to do catch up on planning. Britain actually used to be very good at food planning, but it was rolled back and run down. We need to think about that later.
Right.
But right now, we need to actually recognize there's a mismatch going to happen between supply and demand.
Okay, well, given everything you've said, should we now then have organized stockpiling?
No, because the system can't deliver it. Look, Britain, I've just written a book. It's not out yet, but it's out very soon, called Feeding Britain, where I've just gone through. I mean, it was written before coronavirus, but looking ahead and looking at the present insecurity of Britain. Britain only produces about half of its own food, you know. Actually, last year it was 53%, previous year 51, 50, 49. It runs out. We are heavily dependent on food that comes across the channel or through the tunnel. And the government has been playing posturing with that. The reason, with no deal Brexit, the reason I raise that, Brexit's happening, is because the government's own internal figures and own internal advice said, prepare. This is very dangerous. It can clog up.
Tim,
So
just briefly, one final question. One final question to you. What should the government be doing now, especially since borders all over Europe are closing? In 20 seconds.
That's right. They've got to actually set up a food planning committee. They are now beginning to talk more widely with the food industry. I worry that they're dumping responsibility onto the retailers. I sometimes call the default British food policy, leave it to Tesco et al. This is not a good policy. Government must get a grip. And actually, it's beginning to do that a little bit. I hear the arguments going on from my public health colleagues, but that's not happening in food.
Okay.
They're relying on the food industry to deliver when actually the food industry probably can't.
Okay, Tim, I've got to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed.
I've been getting away with it all